You'll fall asleep just listening to this. Today's special bedtime story, a magical mountain 100 years ago. What was hidden at the top of the living mountain? 100 years ago, hidden beyond the edge of every map, there stood a mountain that no one dared to climb. The villagers believed it could hear every footstep, remember every name, and choose who would return. Some entered seeking treasure. Others searched for answers. But many were never seen again. In the autumn of 1926, a young mapmaker named Elias ignored every warning and stepped into the mountain's ancient forest. What he discovered beneath the earth would challenge everything humanity believed about life, memory, and death. This is the forgotten legend of the Living Mountain, a story of mystery, sacrifice, and an ancient secret that slept beneath the world for thousands of years. So dim the lights, settle in, and journey back 100 years to the mountain that was never made of stone alone. The mountain that breathed. 100 years ago, when maps were still unfinished and the deepest forests remained untouched by modern civilization, there stood a mountain unlike any other. It rose from the earth like the spine of an ancient giant, wrapped in endless forests and hidden beneath clouds that never seemed to leave its peak. Travelers who passed through the nearby valleys never looked directly at it for long. The old villagers called it only one name, the Living Mountain. No one knew when the name first appeared. No one remembered who gave it that title. Yet every child grew up hearing the same warning: never climb the mountain after sunset. Never answer a voice that calls your name among the trees. And if the mountain begins to breathe, run. Most people laughed at such stories. Young men often claimed they would climb to the summit and prove that the mountain was nothing more than stone and trees. Few ever tried. Those who did rarely spoke about what they had seen. Some returned with white hair despite being barely 20 years old. Some refused to speak for the rest of their lives. Others never returned at all. The mountain stood in silence, watching generation after generation disappear like leaves carried away by autumn winds. Every morning, thick mist flowed down its slopes, curling through the forests like slow-moving rivers. Birds avoided certain parts of the woods. Animals refused to cross invisible boundaries. Even wolves howled in the opposite direction. The elders believed the mountain was alive, not alive like a tree, not alive like an animal, alive in a way human minds could never understand. They believed it could hear every footstep, feel every heartbeat, remember every face. Whenever someone entered the forest with greed, anger, or hatred inside their heart, strange things happened. Paths changed, trees moved, time itself became uncertain. A walk that should have taken 1 hour lasted 3 days. Sometimes the opposite happened. People returned home believing only minutes had passed, only to discover 20 years had gone by. No one could explain it. No scholar dared to investigate. The nearest city considered these stories simple village superstition, until one autumn. The year was 1926. Heavy rains had fallen for nearly 2 months. Rivers overflowed, roads disappeared beneath mud, food became scarce. Among the villagers lived a young cartographer named Elias. Unlike the others, Elias believed every mystery had a logical explanation. He loved maps more than stories. He trusted compasses more than legends. Since childhood, he had dreamed of drawing the first complete map of the mountain. People warned him countless times. The mountain changes. There are no fixed paths. You cannot map something that refuses to stay still. Elias smiled politely. A mountain cannot move, he always answered. It only seems mysterious because no one has measured it correctly. His father had once been a hunter. 25 years earlier, he entered the forest with 3 friends. Only Elias, his father, returned. He carried no weapons, no food, no memory of what had happened. Whenever anyone mentioned the mountain, he stared silently toward the window as though listening to someone far away. Years later, he died without speaking another word about that journey. The unanswered mystery haunted Elias throughout his childhood. He promised himself that one day he would uncover the truth, not through myths, not through fear, but through careful observation. On the first cold morning of October, he prepared his expedition. His backpack contained measuring tools, a brass compass, several notebooks, a telescope, rope, lanterns, enough food for 10 days. and a leather journal that had belonged to his father. Inside its faded pages were only 2 sentences, written shakily, repeated dozens of times. "It knows we are here. Do not let it hear your fear." Elias laughed softly. Fear could not hear. Mountains could not think. Old trauma had simply broken his father's mind. At least, that was what he believed. The village gathered to watch him leave. No one celebrated. No one wished him good luck. Instead, each elder quietly placed a small white stone into his hands. He asked why. An old woman answered, "When the mountain decides someone may return, it gives the stone back." He looked down. The stone was perfectly smooth, warm, almost as though someone had been holding it only moments earlier. He slipped it into his pocket anyway, not because he believed, but because refusing would only offend them. As Elias crossed the old wooden bridge leading toward the forest, something strange happened. Every dog in the village began barking at once. The church bell rang. Although nobody touched it, the wind disappeared. Even the leaves stopped moving. Silence spread through the valley. A silence so complete, he could hear his own heartbeat. Then, far above the clouds, the mountain released a deep sound. Not thunder, not an avalanche, not the wind. It sounded like a slow, ancient breath. Elias looked upward. For the first time in his life, he felt the mountain looking back. And somewhere, hidden beyond the endless trees, something had already begun to awaken. The forest that remembered names. The forest welcomed no one. It did not greet strangers with birdsong or the gentle rustling of leaves. Instead, it stood in perfect silence, as though thousands of ancient trees had agreed to hold their breath. Elias crossed beneath the first line of towering pines, just as the morning sun rose over the valley behind him. Within only a few steps, the warmth of daylight faded. The air became cooler, the shadows grew longer, and the world outside simply disappeared. He turned once to look back. The village was gone. The wooden bridge had vanished behind an endless curtain of mist. Only trees remained, tall, ancient, watching. Elias adjusted the leather straps of his backpack and pulled out his notebook. October 3rd, 1926. Entered the forest at approximately 7:15 in the morning. Visibility is lower than expected due to dense fog. Soil is damp, but stable. No signs of wildlife. He smiled to himself. Facts, measurements, observations. These would guide him better than old legends ever could. He took out his compass. The needle pointed north. Satisfied, he continued deeper into the woods. For nearly 3 hours, everything appeared perfectly ordinary. He measured rock formations, sketched unusual trees, marked streams on his map. The deeper he walked, the older the forest became. Some trees were so enormous that 10 men holding hands could not have circled their trunks. Their bark was dark as charcoal, twisted into strange shapes that almost resembled human faces. Several times, Elias caught himself staring at them. The illusion was unsettling. One tree appeared to be smiling, another looked terrified. A third seemed to have its mouth open in silent warning. He shook his head. "Nature creates curious patterns," he whispered. Nothing more. Around noon, he stopped beside a crystal-clear stream. The water was unlike anything he had ever seen. Not a single leaf floated upon its surface. No insects skimmed across it. The stream reflected the sky so perfectly that it looked like polished glass. Elias knelt and filled his canteen. The water was icy cold, refreshing. As he drank, he noticed something odd. His reflection blinked half a second after he did. He frowned. The ripple must have distorted the image. He looked again. This time, everything appeared normal. He laughed quietly. "You're letting the stories get into your head." He packed his equipment and continued. Hours passed. The forest became denser, the silence heavier. Then, he heard it. "Elias," a soft voice drifted through the trees, barely louder than the wind. He froze. Someone was there. Surely another traveler. "Elias!" The voice came again, this time from behind him. He spun around. Nothing. Only rows of towering trees disappearing into fog. "Who's there?" he called. No answer. He waited. Stillness. Then another voice. Closer. "Elias." His heartbeat quickened. It sounded familiar. Painfully familiar. It was his mother's voice. Impossible. She had died when he was 12 years old. He clenched his fists. No. The sound came once more. Gentle. Loving. "My son." His throat tightened. Every instinct told him to follow it. Every childhood memory begged him to answer. Instead, he remembered the villager's warning: never answer a voice that calls your name among the trees. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and walked in the opposite direction. The voice slowly faded, but for several minutes, he could still hear someone quietly crying behind him. When he finally dared to look back, the forest was empty. Only the wind moved between the branches. For the first time since entering the mountain, Elias no longer felt completely alone. Something knew his name. As afternoon slipped toward evening, he reached an enormous clearing unlike anything on his map. Hundreds of stones stood arranged in perfect circles. Each stone was covered in symbols worn smooth by centuries of rain. No plants grew inside the circles, not even grass. The ground was bare, untouched. He carefully examined one of the carvings. The symbols resembled no language he had ever studied, yet somehow they felt strangely familiar, as though he should understand them. A sudden gust of wind swept across the clearing. Every tree surrounding the stones groaned at once, not with the sound of wood bending, but almost like voices whispering together. Thousands of whispers, too quiet to understand, too many to ignore. Elias quickly copied several symbols into his journal. As he finished, something caught his eye. Footprints, fresh, human, leading into the forest beyond the clearing. He knelt beside them. The prints were unusual: bare feet, adult-sized, yet impossibly light. The earth beneath them was hardly disturbed. It looked as though whoever made them barely weighed anything at all. He followed them for nearly half a mile, until they simply ended. No turn, no rocks, no stream, no sign of where the person had gone. The footprints stopped in the middle of the path, as if someone had stepped straight into the air. A cold breeze brushed the back of his neck. He slowly turned. Someone stood among the trees. A child, perhaps 10 years old, barefoot, wearing clothes so old they seemed woven from faded moss. The child's pale face was expressionless. Dark eyes watched him without blinking. "Elias," the child said calmly. "You came." Relief washed over him. At last, a living person. He smiled. "I've been looking for someone." "Do you live here?" The child tilted his head. "I have always lived here." "Where is your family?" "They are sleeping. Can you take me to them?" The child looked toward the mountain. "They cannot wake." A strange unease settled over Elias. "What do you mean?" The child ignored the question. Instead, he asked quietly, "Do you know why the mountain remembers names?" Elias shook his head. The child stepped closer. "So it never loses anyone." A long silence followed. The words echoed strangely through the trees. Before Elias could ask another question, the child slowly raised one hand and pointed toward the fading sunlight. "You should build your fire now." "Why?" "Because when darkness comes..." The child looked up into the towering trees. "They begin walking." Elias frowned. "Who?" The child did not answer. Instead, he smiled, not happily, sadly, as though he pitied someone who had already been lost. Then, without making a sound, he stepped behind a single tree. Elias hurried after him. Only 2 seconds had passed. Yet, there was no one there. No footprints, no broken branches, nothing. The child had vanished. The sun disappeared behind the mountain far sooner than Elias expected. Darkness spread like ink through the forest. He chose a small rocky ridge and quickly built a campfire. The flames pushed back the shadows. For a while, everything felt normal again. He heated a simple meal, updated his journal, checked his compass. The needle spun slowly in endless circles. He frowned. It had worked perfectly all day. Now it refused to settle. He placed it on the ground, still spinning. A distant rumble echoed across the mountain. Not thunder, the same deep sound he had heard from the valley. Slow, ancient, powerful. The mountain breathed again. The fire flickered violently. Leaves trembled overhead. Then, from somewhere beyond the darkness, came the unmistakable sound of footsteps. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Not one pair, many, dozens of them, moving through the forest, slowly, deliberately, circling his camp. Elias grabbed his lantern and stood. "Who's there?" Silence. The footsteps stopped. He raised the lantern higher. Nothing. Only endless trees. Then, all at once, every tree around the campsite released a long, creaking groan. The sound rolled through the forest like a chorus of ancient voices awakening from 100-year sleep. And for one terrifying moment, Elias could have sworn the trees had moved closer. He did not sleep that night, because somewhere beyond the reach of his fire, the forest was no longer standing still, it was walking. The village that vanished overnight. The fire burned until dawn. Not once during the long night did Elias close his eyes. Every time the flames weakened, the footsteps returned. Slow, measured, never hurried. They circled his camp just beyond the light, as if invisible figures were patiently waiting for something. Whenever he lifted his lantern toward the darkness, the sound stopped. The forest became silent again. It was a silence that pressed against his ears, so complete that he could hear the crackle of every ember and the steady beat of his own heart. He told himself there had to be an explanation. Perhaps deer, perhaps wolves, perhaps the strange acoustics of the mountain. Yet no animal he had ever known walked in perfect circles for hours without making another sound. When the first pale light of morning filtered through the branches, the footsteps finally faded. The forest seemed ordinary once more. The birds began to sing. A gentle breeze returned. It was almost as if the terrifying night had never happened. Almost. Elias packed his camp quickly. Before leaving, he examined the ground around the fire. His blood ran cold. The soft earth was covered with footprints. Not animal tracks, not boot prints. Bare human feet. Hundreds of them. Large, small, old, young. They formed a perfect ring around his campsite. Every single footprint faced inward, as though an unseen crowd had stood silently watching him throughout the night. Yet none of the tracks crossed into the circle where the fire had burned. He knelt to study them. The impressions were shallow, almost impossibly light, and they ended exactly where the sunlight touched them. Beyond that point, there was nothing. No trail leading away, no sign of where the people had come from, or where they had gone. He sketched the pattern carefully in his notebook. His hands trembled for the first time since entering the mountain. The compass remained useless. The needle spun lazily, refusing to settle. Elias folded it away and relied instead on the position of the sun. His destination was the northern ridge, where his father's journal mentioned an abandoned shepherd's trail. If the trail still existed, it might lead him higher into the mountain. By midday, the forest began to change. The towering pines gave way to ancient oaks, whose branches twisted together high above, forming a living ceiling. Sunlight barely reached the ground. The air smelled different here, not of damp earth and pine needles, but of smoke. Fresh smoke. Someone had lit a fire. His pulse quickened. He followed the scent through the trees. Minutes later, he stopped at the edge of a wide clearing. There, before him, stood a village. Small cottages with stone chimneys lined a narrow dirt road. Wooden fences surrounded neat vegetable gardens. A water wheel turned lazily beside a sparkling stream. Thin columns of smoke rose from several chimneys. Children's laughter echoed faintly in the distance. For a long moment, Elias simply stared. How could an entire village exist inside the mountain without anyone in the valley knowing? He stepped cautiously toward the nearest cottage. An elderly woman sat outside weaving a basket. She looked up and smiled warmly. "You've come a long way," she said. "I suppose I have. You must be hungry." He hesitated. The stories warned against accepting gifts from the mountain, but this place looked peaceful, ordinary, real. "I'm Elias," he said. The woman's smile faded slightly. "I know." A chill passed through him. "How do you know my name?" "Everyone here knows your name." She spoke so naturally that it sounded like the most ordinary thing in the world. Before he could ask another question, a group of children ran past him, laughing as they chased a handmade wooden wheel. One little girl stopped. She looked directly into his eyes. "My grandfather said you'd come today." "When did he say that?" 100 years ago." The children laughed again and disappeared down the road. Elias frowned. Surely she was joking. He continued into the village. Every person greeted him with the same calm smile. Every person already knew his name. Yet none of them seemed surprised to see a stranger. It was as though they had been expecting him for years. Near the center of the village stood a small stone chapel. Its bell tower leaned slightly with age. Outside the entrance, an old priest swept fallen leaves from the steps. He looked up as Elias approached. "You've arrived later than I expected. You were expecting me?" "Of course." The priest leaned on his broom. "The mountain told us." Elias forced a polite smile. "I'm afraid I don't understand." "No," the priest replied softly. "Not yet." The old man invited him inside. The chapel was simple. Wooden benches, stone walls, A few faded candles flickered near the altar. Behind the altar hung no cross. Instead, a carving of the mountain itself, surrounded by countless stars. Elias had never seen anything like it. "Why worship a mountain?" he asked. The priest smiled gently. "We do not worship it." "What then?" "We remember." The answer only deepened the mystery. The priest reached beneath the altar and removed a large leather-bound book. Its pages were yellow with age. "This is our record." He opened it carefully. Every page contained names, hundreds of names, perhaps thousands. Some entries stretched back centuries. Elias examined the faded handwriting, then his eyes froze. There, near the bottom of one page, written in fresh black ink, was his own name, Elias Rowan. Below it, today's date, October 3rd, 1926. His breath caught in his throat. Who wrote this? The priest looked genuinely confused. "It has always been there." "That's impossible." "Is it?" Elias touched the ink. It was dry, as though it had been written years ago. He closed the book abruptly. "This is some kind of trick." The priest's eyes filled with quiet sadness. "The mountain has many ways of preparing people." By late afternoon, the villagers insisted he stay for supper. Long wooden tables were arranged in the center of the village. Fresh bread, roasted vegetables, warm soup. Everything smelled delicious. Children laughed. Musicians played gentle melodies on handmade flutes. For the first time since entering the mountain, Elias felt safe. Perhaps these people simply lived in isolation. Perhaps the legends had grown from misunderstandings over generations. As the sun began to set, an elderly man seated beside him spoke without looking up. "You must leave before darkness." Elias frowned. "I thought you wanted me to stay." "We do." "Then why should I leave?" "Because we disappear at sunset." Elias laughed politely. "I've heard enough strange stories already." The old man did not smile. "I'm not telling a story." The musicians stopped playing. One by one, the villagers stood. No one spoke. No one panicked. They simply looked toward the mountain. The wind died. The air became unnaturally still. Then, the deep breath echoed across the valley. The mountain inhaled. Every window in the village rattled. The ground trembled. And before Elias's horrified eyes, the nearest cottage began to fade. Not collapse, not burn, fade. Its colors drained away like mist beneath the morning sun. The walls became transparent. The chimney disappeared. Then, the entire house simply ceased to exist. Another cottage vanished. Then another. The villagers did not scream. They only watched quietly. A mother kissed her sleeping child. An old man removed his hat. The priest closed the heavy record book. Within moments, half the village was gone. Elias stumbled backward. "This can't be happening." The elderly woman who had welcomed him looked at him one final time. "We'll see you tomorrow." Her smile was peaceful. Then she dissolved into drifting silver light. Gone. The tables vanished. The food vanished. The music vanished. The chapel faded into nothingness, until only Elias remained, standing alone in an empty clearing. There was no village, no houses, no roads, only wild grass, ancient stones, and the whispering forest. The place where hundreds of people had stood only seconds before looked untouched by human hands, as though no village had ever existed there. A cold breeze swept across the clearing. Then he noticed something lying in the grass. The leather-bound record book. He rushed toward it. His hands shook as he opened the cover. Every page was blank, except one. On the final page, written in dark ink, were 7 chilling words. "Tomorrow, the mountain will show you its heart." At that exact moment, a low voice drifted through the trees. Not loud, not threatening, ancient, patient. Elias. This time, it did not call from behind him. It came from beneath his feet. The ground pulsed once, like the slow, steady beat of a living heart. Beneath the mountain's heart, the ground pulsed beneath Elias's boots. Once, slow, heavy, like the heartbeat of some enormous creature sleeping far below the roots of the forest. He froze. His breathing became shallow as he looked down at the earth. The pulse came again. The grass quivered. Tiny pebbles danced across the soil. Then everything fell silent. Elias slowly knelt and placed one trembling hand on the ground. It felt warm. Not warmed by the afternoon sun. Warm from within. as if heat flowed through the mountain like blood through living veins. He quickly pulled out his notebook. The earth beneath the clearing produces rhythmic vibrations approximately 23 seconds apart. Surface temperature noticeably warmer than surrounding terrain. Possible underground volcanic activity. He stopped writing. No, the rhythm was too perfect. Volcanoes did not beat with the steady cadence of a heart. The next pulse arrived. Thump. His own heart seemed to answer it. For one impossible moment, both rhythms matched. Then they drifted apart again. A cold shiver crept down his spine. The clearing where the village had stood was now empty except for scattered stones and the blank record book resting in his pack. He walked slowly across the field, searching for any trace of buildings, broken foundations, charred wood, fragments of pottery, anything. There was nothing. Even the grass grew evenly across the ground, as though no human foot had touched it for centuries. Yet the smell of fresh bread still lingered faintly in the air. He reached the center of the clearing and noticed a circle of 12 enormous standing stones, half hidden beneath vines and moss. They were unlike the smaller carved stones he had seen earlier. Each stood nearly 15 feet tall. Each was covered with intricate carvings. The symbols resembled twisting roots, flowing rivers, stars, and countless human faces. But there was one image repeated on every stone. A single eye, open, watching. Not the eye of a person. Something older. Something impossible to describe. Elias carefully copied several symbols into his notebook. As his pencil traced the final carving, the stone beneath his fingers vibrated. He jerked his hand away. A low grinding sound echoed through the clearing. Dust drifted from the tops of the standing stones. One by one, the massive pillars began to rotate. Slowly, silently. Each turned only a few degrees. When the last stone stopped moving, a deep crack split the earth inside the circle. The ground folded apart. A staircase emerged from beneath the soil. Its ancient steps descended into complete darkness. A wave of warm air rose from below. It carried the scent of rain, moss, and something else. Something strangely familiar. It smelled like the old leather journal that had belonged to his father. Elias stared into the opening. Logic urged him to leave. Curiosity pulled him forward. He lit his lantern, adjusted the straps of his backpack, and began to descend. The staircase seemed endless. Each step had been carved from black stone, polished smooth by countless feet. The deeper he walked, the quieter the world became. Soon he could no longer hear the wind, or birds, or even his own footsteps. It was as though the mountain absorbed every sound. Only the faint crackle of his lantern remained. After what felt like 20 minutes, the staircase ended before a vast underground chamber. Elias stopped in awe. The cavern stretched farther than his lantern could illuminate. Its ceiling disappeared into darkness high above. Gigantic stone pillars rose like the trunks of impossible trees. Crystals embedded in the walls emitted a soft blue glow, bathing everything in ghostly light. An underground river flowed silently through the center of the chamber. The water shimmered with tiny silver lights that drifted beneath its surface like living stars. He had never imagined such beauty could exist beneath a mountain. Then he noticed the statues, hundreds of them, perhaps thousands. They lined both sides of the cavern, men, women, children, animals, each carved with astonishing detail. Their expressions were so lifelike that they seemed ready to breathe. One woman reached toward the ceiling. A hunter held his bow half drawn. A little boy smiled while clutching a wooden toy. Elias walked among them carefully. Every face was different, every statue unique. He examined the stone closely. The craftsmanship was impossible. Even tiny strands of hair had been captured perfectly. He reached out to touch the hand of an elderly man. The stone felt warm, too warm, almost alive. Suddenly, he remembered something the child in the forest had said. The mountain remembers everyone. A terrible thought crossed his mind. What if these were not statues? What if... He forced the idea away. Impossible. As he ventured deeper into the cavern, he found ancient murals painted across the walls. Unlike the mysterious symbols outside, these images told a story. The first mural showed people climbing the mountain centuries ago. The second depicted the mountain opening like a flower. The third showed streams of glowing light flowing between the mountain and the people. The fourth made his blood run cold. The people were slowly turning into stone, not with expressions of pain, but of peace. Their faces calm, their hands reaching toward the glowing heart hidden beneath the earth. Below the mural was a single line of writing. To his astonishment, he could read it, not because he knew the language, but because the meaning appeared directly inside his mind. Nothing truly dies within the living mountain. He stepped back. His breathing quickened. This place defied every law of nature, every explanation, every certainty he had ever believed. A distant sound echoed through the cavern. Footsteps, not hurried, not threatening, steady. Someone else was here. Elias lifted his lantern. The footsteps grew louder. From behind one of the enormous pillars emerged an old man dressed in a long gray cloak. His white beard reached almost to his waist. His eyes were unlike any Elias had ever seen. One was the color of deep amber, the other shimmered silver. He leaned upon a wooden staff carved from twisted roots. "You finally came." Elias stared. "You know my name too?" The old man smiled gently. "I knew your grandfather. My grandfather died before I was born." "He did. And your father came here 25 years ago." Elias's heart skipped. "You knew my father?" "I still do." The old man turned without another word. "Come." Confused but desperate for answers, Elias followed. They walked through winding passages until they reached a circular chamber unlike any other. In its center grew a tree, not on the surface, not beneath sunlight, but deep inside solid rock. Its trunk was wider than a house. Its bark glowed with faint golden veins. Its branches disappeared into the darkness above, as though they pierced the entire mountain. Its leaves shimmered softly, changing color with every heartbeat beneath the earth. Blue, gold, green, silver. The old man rested his hand upon the ancient trunk. "This," he whispered, "is the first tree." Elias approached slowly. "I don't understand." "You will." The old man looked at him with infinite sadness. "The mountain is not merely stone. It never was. It is older than kingdoms, older than history, older than memory itself." He touched the glowing bark. Immediately, the entire cavern trembled. The heartbeat beneath the earth grew stronger. The leaves began to whisper, not with the sound of wind, but with voices. Thousands upon thousands of voices, speaking every language that had ever existed. Every laugh, every prayer, every farewell, every promise, all carried together through the branches of the impossible tree. Tears filled Elias's eyes without knowing why. The voices were not frightening. They were lonely. The old man closed his eyes. "They are the mountain's memories." Elias looked around in disbelief. "The statues?" The old man nodded slowly. "They chose to stay." "No," Elias whispered. "They died." The old man met his gaze. "No, they were remembered." A heavy silence settled between them. Then Elias asked the question that had haunted him since childhood. "My father?" The old man's expression changed. Pain crossed his face. "He refused." "Refused what?" "To become part of the mountain." "And where is he now?" The old man looked toward the glowing tree. "He has been searching for you." At that very instant, a familiar voice echoed through the chamber, not from the tree, not from the walls, but from somewhere deeper within the mountain. Elias. It was unmistakable. Older, weaker, but unmistakable. His father's voice, and it was calling for him from the darkness beyond the first tree. As Elias took one step toward the sound, the glowing roots beneath the tree suddenly split apart, revealing a hidden passage, descending even farther into the heart of the mountain. The old man's face turned pale. For the first time, he looked afraid. "You must not go down there alone," he said, "because what sleeps below," he tightened his grip on the staff, "has just awakened." The Keeper of Forgotten Souls. The hidden passage yawned open beneath the roots of the first tree. Warm air drifted upward from the darkness below, carrying with it the scent of wet stone, ancient moss, and something else. The unmistakable smell of rain on dry earth. It was the same scent Elias remembered from his childhood, when his father would sit silently by the window during summer storms, staring toward the distant mountain with eyes that seemed to be searching for someone only he could see. Now that familiar scent rose from the depths like a forgotten memory. The old man gripped his staff tightly. His knuckles turned white. For the first time since they had met, his calm expression had vanished. Fear had taken its place, not the fear of a man facing danger. The fear of a man witnessing an old prophecy begin to unfold. "The passage has remained closed for many years," he whispered. "It only opens when the mountain chooses." Elias stared into the darkness. "My father is down there." The old man remained silent. You said he was searching for me. He is. Then I have to go." The old man lowered his head. "I cannot stop you." He reached into the folds of his robe and removed a small object wrapped in faded linen. Carefully, he unfolded the cloth. Inside rested a simple wooden pendant carved into the shape of a leaf. It was smooth with age. Tiny golden lines ran through its surface as though sap still flowed inside it. This belonged to the first keeper. "What is it?" "A promise." Elias frowned. "A promise?" The old man nodded. "The mountain remembers every promise ever spoken beneath its sky." He placed the pendant into Elias's hand. "If darkness begins to speak with your own voice." He paused. "Hold this close. What will it do? It will remind you of who you truly are." Before Elias could ask another question, the old man stepped aside. "The path is yours." The staircase descended deeper than anything Elias could have imagined. His lantern illuminated walls unlike the rough stone tunnels above. Here the rock was perfectly smooth, almost polished. Veins of glowing crystal pulsed beneath its surface, not randomly, rhythmically. Each pulse matched the heartbeat he had felt in the earth above. Thump! Light spread through the walls. Thump! The glow faded. It was as though the entire mountain possessed veins carrying rivers of living light. Minutes became impossible to measure. The passage twisted downward in slow spirals. Sometimes, Elias felt as though he were walking inside the trunk of an unimaginably large tree rather than beneath a mountain. The air grew warmer, the silence deeper. Then, he heard whispers. At first, they were impossible to understand. Soft voices carried by unseen currents. One voice became two became dozens. Soon hundreds of whispers surrounded him. None came from the tunnel itself. They seemed to rise directly from the glowing walls. He slowed his pace. The whispers gradually became clear. "I miss home. Tell my daughter I waited. Don't forget me. We were here." Men, women, children, old voices, young voices, each spoke only a single sentence before fading away. None sounded frightened, only remembered. Elias reached toward the wall. As his fingertips brushed the glowing stone, a vision exploded inside his mind. A fisherman standing beside a frozen lake, a little girl laughing as snow fell around her, a soldier embracing his wife before leaving for war, a mother singing softly to her sleeping baby. Hundreds of lives flashed before him. Not dreams, memories, each lasting only a heartbeat. He staggered backward, gasping. The visions vanished. The whispers fell silent once more. His own memories remained untouched. But now, he understood. The mountain did not simply remember names, it remembered lives. Every joy, every sorrow, every farewell, every hope. Nothing was ever truly lost here. Hours later, the tunnel widened into another vast chamber. This one was unlike any place Elias had ever imagined. Thousands upon thousands of glowing threads stretched from the ceiling to the floor. Each thread shimmered with a different color. Some glowed bright gold, others pale blue, others silver. A few flickered weakly, as though about to fade forever. The chamber resembled an endless forest made entirely of light. The threads swayed gently, despite the complete absence of wind. In the center stood a single figure, tall, motionless, draped in robes woven from countless strands of silver. Its hood concealed its face. Its hands rested upon an ancient staff grown from white roots. Without lifting its head, the figure spoke. "I have waited for you." Its voice sounded neither male nor female, young nor old. Instead, it carried the echoes of countless voices speaking together. Elias tightened his grip on the wooden pendant. "Who are you?" The figure slowly raised its head. Beneath the hood was no face, only a swirling field of gentle starlight. Within that light drifted thousands of tiny glowing sparks, like distant souls carried across a night sky. "I am the Keeper." The Keeper of what? The memories no world should ever lose. Elias looked around at the glowing threads. "What are these?" The Keeper lifted one luminous strand carefully between its fingers. "This," it said softly, "is a life remembered." The thread brightened. Instantly, images appeared in the air. A young woman planting an apple tree, children running through a field, an old man smiling as he watched the sunset. Then the images dissolved. The thread returned to silence. "The mountain keeps them all," said the Keeper. "So no love is ever erased. So no sacrifice is forgotten. So no soul vanishes into emptiness." Elias stared in wonder. Then, the people who disappeared, they remain. As memories, as themselves. The keeper's voice remained calm. The world above calls it death. The mountain calls it remembering. Elias's thoughts returned immediately to his father. Is he here? The keeper did not answer. Instead, it walked slowly between the glowing threads. Each strand bent gently toward the mysterious figure, as though greeting an old friend. Finally, it stopped before a thread unlike all the others. It burned with a warm amber light. Strong, steady, almost alive. The keeper touched it. The chamber filled with light. Elias saw his father, not as the silent, broken man he remembered, but as a young hunter, laughing, strong, leading 3 friends through the forest 25 years earlier. The vision shifted. The hunters discovered the hidden staircase beneath the standing stones, just as Elias had. They entered the mountain. They reached the first tree. Then, darkness. Something moved beneath the roots, not clearly, only a vast shadow. The hunters fled. 3 were consumed by brilliant light. Only Elias's father escaped. But, as he reached the forest, he turned back. Someone called his name. Not once, many times. His face changed. The joy disappeared from his eyes forever. The vision ended. Elias looked at the keeper. He escaped. His body escaped. The keeper lowered its head, but part of him remained. What does that mean? The mountain called. And he answered. A deep tremor rolled through the chamber. Every glowing thread swayed violently. Several dimmed. The keeper looked toward the darkness beyond the hall. Its voice became urgent. It is waking. What is? The one who dreams beneath the roots. The heartbeat echoed again, louder than ever before. Thump. The floor shook. Thump. Tiny fragments of crystal fell from the ceiling. Thump. A distant roar rolled through the mountain. Not angry, ancient, like the sound of continents shifting beneath the sea. The keeper closed its eyes. For thousands of years, it whispered, the heart sleeper has dreamed. As long as it sleeps, the mountain remembers. But if it fully awakens, the glowing threads around them flickered wildly. Every memory kept within these halls will return to the world all at once. Elias frowned. Wouldn't that be a good thing? The keeper slowly turned toward him. Can a human mind survive remembering every life that has ever existed? Elias said nothing. The answer was obvious. No. The keeper extended one hand toward him. The mountain chose you because you carry 2 paths within your heart. What paths? One leads to memory. The other, it paused, leads to forgetting. Another violent tremor shook the chamber. From somewhere beyond the glowing halls came a familiar voice. Elias, his father's voice, this time desperate, closer than ever before. Run! The keeper's starlit face lifted sharply. It has found him. Without another word, the mysterious guardian pointed toward a narrow bridge of black stone stretching across a bottomless abyss. Beyond the bridge, far in the darkness, a pair of colossal golden eyes slowly opened. They were larger than houses, older than mountains, and they were looking directly at Elias. The mountain had finally revealed the being that slept within its heart, and it knew his name. The eyes beneath the earth. For one endless moment, nothing moved. The enormous golden eyes remained fixed on Elias from across the abyss. They did not blink. They did not glow brighter. They simply watched. The silence that followed felt heavier than the mountain itself. Even the heartbeat beneath the earth seemed to hesitate. Thump, thump. Elias could not breathe. His lantern slipped from his trembling hand and struck the black stone bridge with a sharp clang. The sound echoed into the darkness. It traveled farther than it should have. Once, twice, a dozen times, as if the mountain itself were repeating it. Then, the eyes blinked. Slowly, the motion stirred a wind so powerful that Elias nearly lost his footing. Dust rose from the abyss like ancient spirits awakening after centuries of sleep. The keeper stepped forward. Its silver robes fluttered despite the still air. Do not stare into its eyes for too long. Elias forced himself to look away. What is it? The keeper remained silent for several heartbeats. Finally it answered. Long before people gave this place a name, long before kingdoms rose and fell, there existed only the first tree and the one who dreamed beneath its roots. It is not a god. It is not a beast. It is something older than both. It remembers the world before the first human spoke. Elias swallowed hard. The heart sleeper, the keeper nodded. That is the closest name your language can give it. The abyss stretched farther than the light could reach. The black stone bridge was narrow, worn smooth by time. No railing, no support. Only a single path leading toward the impossible darkness where the golden eyes had opened. Far below, something moved. Not quickly, slowly, like enormous roots drifting through deep water. Except they were not roots. They were too smooth, too deliberate, too alive. The keeper raised its staff. "You must cross." Elias looked at the endless drop. "And if I fall?" The keeper's starlit face dimmed slightly. "No one falls. They are remembered." Those words no longer comforted him. He stepped onto the bridge. Immediately the stone became warm beneath his boots. The heartbeat echoed again. Thump! A faint golden light spread through the bridge. With every step, old carvings appeared beneath his feet. Thousands of tiny symbols hidden inside the stone. Faces, trees, stars, mountains, entire civilizations etched into the rock. He knelt to examine one image. It showed a group of travelers standing exactly where he now stood. Behind them walked a young hunter carrying a bow. His father. Another carving appeared farther ahead. His father was older, alone, kneeling before the first tree. Another. His father leaving the mountain, looking back, crying. Elias's chest tightened. The bridge was showing history, not legends. Truth. Halfway across, the whispers returned. But this time, they did not come from the walls. They came from the abyss below. Thousands of voices rose together like waves upon the sea. "Elias, come home. We remember. You are not alone." He gripped the wooden pendant tightly. The keeper had warned him. If darkness began to speak with his own voice, remember who you are. The pendant grew warm. Its golden veins glowed softly. Instantly the whispers became distant. Not gone, only quieter. He continued walking. The bridge ended before an enormous circular platform carved from black crystal. In its center stood a single chair. No, not a chair. A throne. Its back rose nearly 20 feet high. Twisted roots and polished stone intertwined to form its shape. Countless names had been carved into its surface. Millions, perhaps. Every language, every alphabet, every era. The keeper stopped several steps behind Elias. "You have reached the seat of memory." Elias stared at the empty throne. "Who sits here?" "No one. Not anymore. What happened to the last keeper?" The silver-robed guardian lowered its head. "I am the last keeper." The answer confused him. "But you're standing here. For now." Its voice carried an unexpected sadness. "The keeper is never chosen. The keeper is accepted." Elias slowly turned. "What does that mean?" The keeper looked directly toward him. "The mountain has called another." A cold realization settled over Elias. "No." The keeper said nothing. "No," Elias repeated more firmly. "I came here to find my father. I didn't come here to stay." Before the keeper could answer, a human voice echoed through the darkness. "Elias!" He spun around. There, standing beyond the throne, was a man. His clothes were torn. His beard had turned gray. But his eyes, they were unmistakable. His father, older than Elias remembered, yet somehow unchanged. For a heartbeat neither of them moved. Then Elias ran. "Father!" The older man met him halfway. They embraced tightly. Years of silence dissolved in a single moment. Elias felt tears streaming down his face. "I thought you were dead." His father held him at arm's length. "So did I." His voice was rough. "I've waited so long, so have I." For several moments neither spoke. The silence between them carried 25 years of unanswered questions. Finally Elias whispered, "Why did you leave us?" Pain filled his father's eyes. "I never truly did." They sat together beside the throne, while the keeper watched quietly. His father began to speak. "When I first entered the mountain, I was young, proud. I believed every mystery could be conquered." He smiled sadly. "Very much like you." Elias lowered his eyes. "We found the first tree. We heard the heart sleeper, and we were offered a choice." "What choice?" His father looked toward the darkness. "To become part of the mountain, or leave. You chose to leave. My body did." He touched his chest. "But not my heart." He closed his eyes. "The mountain showed me every life that had ever touched this world. I saw children yet to be born. I saw civilizations that no longer exist. I remembered people I had never met. My own memories became lost among millions of others. When I returned home, I could no longer tell which memories belonged to me, Elias remembered. His father's empty stare, his silence, the endless afternoon spent gazing toward the mountain. You were still here, his father nodded. Part of me never left. A violent tremor interrupted them. The throne vibrated. The abyss roared. The heartbeat accelerated. Thump, thump, thump. The golden eyes opened wider. The darkness beyond them shifted. For the first time, the heart sleeper moved. A massive shape slowly emerged from the shadows. Not entirely, only enough for Elias to understand its impossible scale. Its body resembled neither animal nor human. It was formed from living stone, intertwined with roots, crystal, flowing water, and countless glowing stars. Mountains seemed tiny compared to it. Entire forests could have rested upon its back. Its breathing caused rivers of light to flow through the cavern. Its eyes held neither anger nor kindness, only endless age. The keeper dropped to one knee. So it begins. The heart sleeper spoke, not inside every thought Elias possessed. The circle is broken. The entire mountain shook. The last keeper grows weary. The glowing threads in the great hall flickered. Several snapped. Their light drifted upward like fireflies. Memory fades. The creature's immense gaze settled upon Elias. Will you remember? Elias felt every memory of his childhood rush through his mind. His mother's smile, his father's silence, the village, the footsteps, the vanished people, the first tree, the keeper, everything. Then, other memories began appearing. Lives he had never lived, faces he had never known, thousands, millions. They flooded toward him like a tidal wave. He cried out and fell to his knees. The pendant burned brightly against his chest. His father's voice reached him through the storm. Elias, hold on to yourself. Remember your name. The keeper struck its staff against the crystal floor. A ring of silver light surrounded Elias. The flood slowed, but it did not stop. The heart sleeper waited, patiently, ancient beyond imagination. Then it spoke one final sentence, a sentence that echoed through every chamber of the living mountain. Every keeper must choose. The throne behind Elias began to glow. Its roots spread across the floor like living vines. Slowly, they reached toward him, not to capture him, to invite him. His father stepped forward. I know what you're thinking. Elias looked at him through tear-filled eyes. I can't. You may be the only one who can, and if I refuse? His father closed his eyes. The keeper answered instead. Then the mountain will begin to forget. Far above them, the living mountain released the loudest breath it had taken in 1,000 years. The sound rolled across forests, valleys, rivers, and distant villages. Every living creature heard it. Every bird took flight. Every wolf fell silent. Every tree bent toward the ancient peak. Because deep beneath the earth, the fate of every memory ever entrusted to the mountain now rested in the hands of one man. The choice of the last keeper. Final chapter. The mountain waited. No wind stirred the endless cavern. No crystal shimmered. Even the heartbeat beneath the earth slowed, as though time itself had paused to hear Elias's answer. The ancient throne continued to glow. Its roots stretched across the black crystal floor until they stopped just before his feet. They did not wrap around him. They did not force him forward. They simply waited. The heart sleeper's immense golden eyes remained fixed upon him. There was no anger within them, no command, only patience. The patience of something that had watched oceans rise and kingdoms disappear. Elias slowly stood. His hands were shaking. His thoughts were a storm. All his life, he had believed every mystery could be solved, every legend explained, every impossible story reduced to reason. But reason had brought him only this far. Beyond this point, only choice remained. His father stepped closer. I know what you're afraid of. Elias looked at him. I'm afraid of forgetting. His father nodded. So was I. He smiled sadly. When I came here 25 years ago, I believed memory was simply something we carried in our minds. He looked toward the first tree, far beyond the glowing chamber. But memory is more than that. It is love. It is sacrifice. It is every promise ever kept. It is every kindness that changed another life. If memory disappears, the world becomes smaller. His eyes filled with quiet tears. And if one day no one remembers those who came before us, it is as though they never lived at all. Elias remained silent. Those words settled deep within him. The keeper approached for the final time. The silver light within its hood had begun to fade. The countless voices that had once echoed inside it were growing softer. My time is ending. Elias looked at the mysterious guardian. Who were you before you became the keeper? For the first time, the keeper laughed. A gentle laugh, almost human. I asked that same question of the keeper before me. And what was the answer? The keeper lifted its hood. The starlight slowly dissolved. For the first time, a face appeared. An ordinary face, weathered with age, kind eyes, a peaceful smile. I was once a traveler, like you. I came searching for answers, and I found responsibility. The old guardian removed the silver robes and folded them carefully. Without them, he looked simply like an elderly man who had walked a very long road. There has never been one keeper. There have been many. Each served until another arrived. No one ruled this place. We only listened. The old man placed his wooden staff upon the throne. The mountain never wanted a servant. It only needed someone who would remember. Elias turned toward the heart sleeper. I have one question. The ancient being answered without words. Its voice echoed gently inside his heart. Ask, if I become the keeper, will I lose myself? For a long moment, nothing. Then the answer came. Only if you try to carry every memory alone. Elias frowned. I don't understand. The heart sleeper's eyes softened. Images appeared around the chamber. Children telling stories beside a fire. Grandparents sharing old photographs. Parents teaching songs to their children. Friends laughing over forgotten adventures. Artists painting history. Writers filling books. Musicians composing melodies. Teachers passing knowledge to eager students. The visions spread across the cavern like living light. Then, the heart sleeper spoke once more. Memory was never meant for one heart. It lives when it is shared. In that instant, Elias understood. The mountain had protected memory because people feared losing it. But perhaps the world no longer needed a single guardian hidden beneath the earth. Perhaps the greatest way to preserve memory was to let it live among people again. He looked toward the throne. Then, slowly, he stepped away from it. The keeper watched him carefully. You refuse? Elias shook his head. I choose a different path. He held up the leather journal that had belonged to his father. This mountain has spent thousands of years remembering the world. Now, it's time for the world to remember the mountain. The old keeper's eyes widened. The heart sleeper remained perfectly still. Elias continued, I will leave, I will write everything I have seen, I will tell every story, I will preserve every memory I can. I cannot remember every life, but humanity can. If one person teaches another, and that person teaches another, no memory is ever truly lost. Silence filled the cavern. Then, for the first time, the heart sleeper smiled, not with lips, with light. Its golden eyes brightened until the entire mountain glowed from within. The heartbeat became calm, steady, peaceful. The first tree blossomed. Millions of glowing leaves burst into brilliant color. The countless threads of memory rose gently into the air. Instead of remaining trapped within the mountain, they drifted upward like stars returning to the night sky, through stone, through forests, through clouds, across the entire world. Some settled into the hearts of dreamers, some into the minds of artists, some into the songs of wandering musicians, some into the stories grandparents would tell children for generations to come. The mountain was no longer keeping every memory, it was sharing them. The old keeper smiled. I have waited centuries to see this day. His body began to glow softly. Thank you. Before Elias could answer, the old man dissolved into countless points of silver light. They rose quietly into the branches of the first tree, then disappeared, not as a death, but as a homecoming. Elias turned to his father. What about you? His father looked around the glowing cavern one final time. My journey ended here long ago. He placed both hands on Elias's shoulders. But yours is only beginning. He reached into his pocket and removed the smooth white stone the villagers had once given him. I kept this for 25 years. He placed it into Elias's palm. It belongs to you now. Tears filled Elias's eyes. I don't want to lose you again, his father smiled. You won't, as long as you remember. His body slowly became surrounded by warm golden light. Unlike before, Elias was not afraid. His father looked peaceful, whole. The silence that had haunted him for 25 years was gone. "I love you, son. I love you too." With those final words, his father stepped toward the first tree. The glowing roots embraced him gently. He became light. Then, a single golden leaf drifted down into Elias's hands. Nothing more remained. Yet somehow, nothing had been lost. The heart sleeper slowly closed its immense eyes. Its breathing became softer. The mountain's heartbeat settled into a peaceful rhythm. Before sleep claimed it once more, its final words echoed through the chamber. "Remember, and let others remember too." Then, it slept. When Elias climbed back to the surface, dawn was breaking. Golden sunlight spilled across the forest. The mist was gone. Birds sang from every branch. The air felt lighter. The mountain no longer seemed to be hiding. As he reached the clearing where the mysterious village had appeared, he stopped. The 12 standing stones remained. But now, small wildflowers bloomed between them. In the center of the circle lay the blank record book. He opened it. Every page was still empty, except the last. There, in elegant handwriting, appeared a single sentence. "The greatest keeper of memory is a story honestly told." Elias smiled. He closed the book and began the long walk home. Months passed. The villagers noticed something had changed. The mountain no longer frightened travelers. The strange voices had fallen silent. The forest remained mysterious, but never cruel. Elias spent years writing everything he had experienced. He never claimed the mountain was magic. He never demanded that anyone believe him. He simply told the truth as he had lived it. Some readers called it a fairy tale. Others believed every word. Elias never argued with either, because he had learned something far more important than proving a mystery. Some truths are not meant to be conquered. They are meant to be carried. Years became decades. Decades became a century. The old maps faded. The names of forgotten villages disappeared. The people who had known Elias grew old and passed away. Yet his story survived, passed from one generation to the next. A quiet reminder that somewhere beyond the ordinary world, there might still exist places that breathe with ancient life, places that guard the echoes of those who came before us. And on certain misty mornings, when the first rays of sunlight touch the highest peak, some travelers still pause, not because they are afraid, but because they feel, for just a moment, that the mountain is breathing. And somewhere deep within its peaceful heart, every act of kindness, every promise kept, every story shared, is gently remembered. I'm ending the story here. You may not be awake right now. Stay tuned by subscribing to the channel to hear more such stories in the future.